Everyone, we are ready to begin our workshop session. We still have a full quorum. It is 6:08 p.m. The first item on our agenda is an update by the Superintendent of the Clayton County Schools, Dr. Morcease Beasley. Good evening, Dr. Beasley. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
It's good to see all of you, City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity. It seems like it's been a while since I've been here face to face, but we know that you're very busy. But we did want to share, if you will allow us a minute or two, some critical updates that I think would be beneficial for you and for the College Park community. First, you should know that North Clayton High School, we're very proud to share, has finally gone above the 80% mark with its graduation rate. So it is at 81.3%. And I'm excited to share that Dr. Horton over there has students duly enrolled in AP, and honestly, I anticipate that will be one of the first schools to hit the 90% grad rate that has never hit the 90% grad rate. I am excited that the middle school, and if you don't know this, you should, they have more students at North Clayton Middle School taking courses for high school credit than any other middle school in the district.
Wow. Fantastic. We're
very proud of the aviation program that exists at the high school. If you've not been over there, you should go over there to see it. And we're very pleased with the aviation-focused drone program that exists at the middle school. Our elementary school clearly is focused on STEM, literacy, and they are working diligently to ensure that they close all the gaps. We did send a video to you of our recent announcement that in the next SPLOST, we are planning for a brand new North Clayton High School, a brand new North Clayton High School facility. We're excited, it's really past due for it, and you should know that within our school system, not only will we be building new facilities to include 4 new STEM elementary schools, to include 6 early learning centers. Yes, 6 early learning centers. The goal, and we need you to help us get the word out, the goal is to ensure that every pre-K eligible child in Clayton County gets a seat in some program. We know the data is very clear, or the data are very clear, that students who attend pre-K, they have a tendency or are more likely to be reading and doing math on or above grade level throughout their K-12 experience. So we want to close the gap. If you don't know, you should know this. We have about 3,200 students in elementary school, a little under 1,000 in pre-K. So we have an opportunity here to get about 2,200 students in early learning, pre-K in particular. Once we implement those 6 early learning centers, that will give us, at a minimum, a capacity of 3,000 seats. So no excuse for any family in Clayton County that wants their child or children in pre-K not to be in pre-K. We are excited about the work that's being done. We are continuing to address our challenges, but I want you to know that Clayton County is very pleased. We're very pleased with the work that's occurring in the North Clayton cluster, as the data clearly reveals that students are learning, they're learning at high levels, and they're going on to great post-secondary options. I'll entertain any questions that you may have. Please know that we're not a perfect school system, but I don't know of a perfect school system anywhere, and we're working on every area, and the data reflect that we are improving in every area across the board.
Thank you, Dr. Beasley. We'll go ahead and start with Councilman Clay and work our way down. Any questions?
Yes, I reviewed your sheet. Thank you. It seems very well organized, very comprehensive. The one question I have, and you got to understand, I'm the techno geek on council, so this is obviously coming from my wheelhouse, but you emphasized that on one of your objectives, strategic goals, a creative district where scholars and community have access to the arts and cultural experiences. That was your goal. You do have STEM when you get into the next level down about things you're doing strategically, but I was kind of surprised that you were emphasizing the arts, and there wasn't a similar high-level philosophical goal, what have you, in the sciences?
That's a great question. So to be very clear, when we identified the first goal is infused with STEM. As a matter of fact, we are a STEM district, and we have schools that are STEM certified and schools that are working towards STEAM as well. It's the expectation in our school system that our students are getting STEM across all curricula, across all grade levels, and you should know that every school along the STEM continuum, every school is expected to work toward some type of STEM implementation, STEAM implementation, with a minimum expectation already established. The Board of Education decided that it would add that sixth goal because we wanted to also acknowledge that we are a district that has a K-12, one of the very few districts in the state that has a K-12 performing arts matriculation from elementary to middle to high school, but not to exclude STEM. It is expected across the board, every school. It's a part of our instructional framework.
Okay, that was the answer I was hoping to hear, that you had already built it in so well into the program that if you were going to emphasize something that you felt also needed to be given a boost, so to speak, that would be, that was why that other goal was added.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. A very impressive document and good thinking.
Thank you.
Councilman Carn?
All right, Dr. Beasley, glad to have you here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. You guys are rocking and rolling down there. Couple of questions. So are you increasing in student population or decreasing, and how has COVID took you through the loops there? Where are you at over the last couple of years?
As you probably would expect, at the onset of the pandemic or within the year, the first year or so, we decreased, but we're going back in the positive direction. Before the pandemic, we were at about 54, almost 55,000 students. So we're at about 53, maybe a little over 53,000. So we're going back in the right direction. And we've noticed quite a bit of our attendance or student loss being at the lower grade levels, in particular kindergarten, as you can imagine, kindergarten being optional, but we are moving in the right direction. We believe that as we put distance between us and the pandemic, we will see more and more of our families returning to Clayton County.
Okay, that's good news. One of the things, obviously, you know, I worked with the Fulton County schools. I raised my children in Fulton County schools around College Park. Was on the local LSAT board, PTA vice president at one point, at one of the other schools they were at. You guys probably have the same issues that we're dealing with. Each and every black male teacher is obviously a rarity if it's somewhat like in Fulton County. And obviously a black male teacher is not just a teacher. You know, that's a potential surrogate father, role model, and sometimes likely the only male figure in that kid's life, you know, at a steady pace there, more or less. Talk to me about, are you guys, I mean, I guess you understand that, obviously. I'm sure it's not lost on you, Doctor, but in terms of policy and converting something along those lines to policy, special recruitment, incentive salaries for those type of teachers, because those type of teachers alleviate a whole plethora of problems that go far outside of your school doors, which I'm sure you could imagine. I would like, if you don't have anything in place, I'd like you and the board to certainly, definitely take a look at that in terms of extra recruitment efforts, incentives, extra pay, and whatever have you, because the more you see those folks in the classrooms. I was at Hapeville Charter, and we were actually selecting the teacher of the year from 3 finalists. And we went into classrooms and observed the 3 finalists, and it was really something. And we interviewed them, you know, thereafter. So it was really interesting, and that was the biggest issue that they had, not enough male teachers. So where are you with that? What's your ratio, male to female? Do you know in terms of And do you have an incentive program?
We don't have an incentive program specifically for male teachers relative to the pay. I think that's what I heard you say. But we do have incentive programs for our educators in general. Not only are we working diligently and strategically to increase the number of male teachers, we have right now, I will say, less than 400 male teachers out of a teaching force of about 3,000 teachers. We are, of course, making sure that our pay is competitive. As you well know, oftentimes that is one of the determining factors, pay being competitive. But in addition to a competitive pay, as our board just this Saturday discussed our proposed teacher pay scale, we are adding retention bonuses, incentive bonuses, and some other opportunities for various levels of endorsements, certifications that they may have. You should know that we are very intentional about our partnerships, so we have partnerships with Clark Atlanta University and other historically black colleges and universities to work to hopefully become that pipeline, if you will, from their colleges to our classrooms. But we are in the process of designing a pipeline that will allow us to tap into our high school students who are interested in the teaching profession very early, get them connected to dual enrollment or some type of early college experience, with the expectation that hopefully when they matriculate into the college space, they'll earn their teaching degree certification and then matriculate back into Clayton County to provide instruction to our students. That is a work in progress. Of course, we've got several colleges around the state that we are working with. That's an area that is somewhat complicated in that our schools of education around the nation hadn't done too great of a job recruiting black males. As you can see, I'm a black male teacher, and I can assure you I wasn't the norm in the program that I attended, and I attended Sanford University in the city of Birmingham. But there's an opportunity for us to actually go out and encourage and be very clear and strategic about the benefits that individuals can bring into our school district, and that they can have access to themselves if they will go into the field of education. We do know that nationally there is an issue, but I do sit on the governor's task force of looking at the educational experience in our schools of education. So that's just an area that we are working to address, because we do know that not only do we have a national shortage of teachers, but we clearly have a lack of black male teachers that we believe removes from our classrooms a certain degree of experience and success for our students.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, sounds good.
Councilman Allen?
First of all, I love your positive attitude. Gosh, if I had teachers or people involved in school when I was I probably would have studied a little bit more. I don't know, but appreciate your positive attitude. I was at your luncheon the other day, and a lot of good things came out about Clayton County. Out on West Fayetteville Road, if you've seen some of the trees going down, there are going to be a lot of townhomes, apartments, multifamily be moving in there. So middle school, beware. In 2 or 3 years, there'll be a lot more people coming in. So.
Well, and I hope, Mr. Allen, that we will tell the families, and we'll do our part, hope all of us will tell the families that they're moving into what I think is one of the most progressive clusters right now occurring in our school system. Very proud of the work, and we're excited to welcome more families into our school system.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Councilman Gay?
Yes, sir. Well, first off, like everyone else, thank you for the great work that y'all do. You do have two great guys, Dr. Horton and Dr. Raff, frat brothers. Tell them I say hello. My question is that when we increase our population, how does that affect the student-teacher ratio currently?
We keep our student teachers at a standard ratio, so even as you increase the population, the enrollment of students, we are expected to increase the number of teachers to maintain that ratio unless we change that ratio. So right now, even if you send us an additional 100 students, we're going to keep the student-teacher ratio the same and just increase the number of teachers to maintain that ratio.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let me just say that one of your elite scholars applied to my alma mater, and I had the pleasure of interviewing him, and it was a delight. And I don't know what happens. I hand things off, and I have no control over the process, and I told him that. But very impressive what is going on in the school district. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the program that I just think is fantastic with getting kids into first responders, specifically firefighting.
Yes.
Because I think it's just such an outstanding program, and I'm not sure that the entire council is aware of it.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do have, and to my knowledge, it's the only one in the state of Georgia, where basically at Drew High School, any high school, honestly, but at Drew High School, Mundy's Mills High School, and students from other high schools who are interested in becoming firefighters or EMTs, they can study with us in Clayton County, along with firefighters who work for Clayton County Firefighting Department or Emergency Management. They can actually study while they're in high school, take the test that they need to take, and upon graduation actually walk into a firefighter job, EMTs, right here in Clayton County. So we're excited that we started that program. If you know former Commissioner Sunay Gregory, she helped us, along with, of course, Commissioner Turner and Chief Murkison. They basically were the brainchilds to help us to pull it all together. And students, again, while they may not be at Drew High School or Mundy's Mill High School, if they are interested in that program, they may participate in that program. You should know that once we get the arena built, the arena at the South Lake Mall location will also house the College and Career Academy. That will be a program housed there that will be able to serve all students from every high school in our county. I should share that we're also trying to develop, and I say trying to because it's in progress, 911 program for students that are interested in being 911 operators as well. And we have begun conversations to develop some type of public service academy relative to those who are interested in being police officers right here in Clayton County. So several programs, one clearly, as you've mentioned, that is already up and running, but of two others that we want to move, advance, so our students can benefit from those programs as well.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Dr. Beasley, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time and this update on all the great things that are going on in the district.
Thank you all. And if there's anything that we can do to support you, you should know that I'll be speaking with the seniors at North Clayton High School. I can't remember what day. It may be in next week, I believe, next Monday. I'll be speaking. I am going around to all the high schools speaking with the senior classes. So I'll be speaking with the seniors at North Clayton High School on Monday. Please feel free to drop by if your schedules allow. We would love to see you and acknowledge you at that meeting. Our intention is basically to help our seniors stay focused, remind them of our expectations, that we want them and expect them to graduate, and that they have plans in place for the day after graduation.
Amen.
Fantastic.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Monday at 11 a.m. at North Clayton High School.
Great.
Thank you
so
for this
much.
opportunity. I look
All
forward
right.
to seeing you soon.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Ms.
Then-
Tyus, make sure that's in our calendars, just make sure.
So the next item on the agenda is the presentation of the findings on the Willingham LCI study.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Council. Obviously, I guess you all know me, but for those who don't, I am Tasha Hall Garrison, the Community Development Administrator for College Park. Last year, in March 2021, I began representing the City of College Park, along with representatives from East Point, Hateville, and Aerotropolis, Atlanta, as far as to serve on the Willingham Livable Centers Initiative Project Management Team, as far as our stakeholders team. Beginning in June, we selected a group of consultants to help us and assist us with the transformation of creative ideas to be utilized in the Willingham corridor. John Tooley was selected to serve, and at that point, in June, he began running with these ideals, and today he will be able to present the selections and the projects identified within that project. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to kind of be looking up here to make sure I know where I am, and I've got a timer here to make sure I don't talk too much. I really enjoyed this project and working with your staff and other staff a lot, so don't give me the hook if I end up talking too much about some of it. Prepared some slides to talk through the findings from the study, but obviously there's a lot more in the study itself than we can compile in a short presentation. Happy to chat with you all afterwards offline and obviously make the presentation available to you all and the full study. So this was roughly an 8-month study from start to finish. Again, it was funded through the Atlanta Regional Commission, and as Tasha mentioned, it was a joint study between the 3 cities of College Park, East Point, and Hapeville. Again, some really good Southside collaboration that I really appreciate. My time working in the area started with when I was with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and then a few years ago joined Kimberly Horn on the consulting side. So I've seen for several years the Tri-Cities and others collaborating. It's great to see this continue. On the slide, you can see roughly what the process was and what it included, kind of looking at existing conditions along the corridor, identifying catalytic sites, and some real key strategic projects to push the area forward. Next slide. I mean, as you all know, this corridor, it's one of those places you drive through to get to places. It's not really a place you go to anymore. In its past, it really was one of those places that was a job center for the Tri-Cities. And really, a lot of those things have kind of come to pass with jobs leaving the area, a lot of factories leaving the area. And so a main focus of the study was to really recast a vision for this area. What is this going to be in the future? Instead of being an area that kind of is the dividing line between the Tri-Cities, how does it bring the area back together? There's already a lot of interesting projects and things underway to build on, so we're not necessarily starting from scratch, but really kind of building on those efforts that have already gotten underway. Next slide. And so one of the key things, like I said, was to identify some potential catalytic sites. And you can't do everything everywhere at one time. And so where are some of those kind of low-hanging fruit type opportunities? Where are those things that we need to really kind of focus in? Where are there already projects underway that we can capitalize on? And so on the slide, you can see those 3 or 4 areas that we focused on. I want to mention really what this was focused on is areas 1, 2, and 3 as those primary catalytic locations. 4 was not an area that we wanted to forget about. This is the former Owens, Illinois factory, right? And so there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of discussions going on there. We didn't necessarily want to wade into that during this process, but we did want that to not be on folks' radar and think about how this could influence that site and vice versa. Next slide. Now, one of the things that I said starting off, and again, I mentioned that I've been working in the area for a while, starting with my time at the Atlanta Regional Commission. I mean, this is a very challenging corridor. There's a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of trucks that are in the area. There's a lot of industrial sites that are still in play. There's a lot of utilities that are using this area. This is a very important corridor, not just for people to move in cars, but for electricity to move, for water and sewer to move. The Flint River itself, as y'all know, flows through this area. And so I was very honest up front that this is a challenging corridor. We're going to have to really kind of dig away the layers to figure out what we're doing here. But one of the things that we figured out pretty quickly was there actually is an interesting opportunity to utilize not only the Willingham corridor itself, but the Flint River, the headwaters of the Flint, to really begin to string together a new organizing kind of principle, new organizing feature for the whole area. And so that's what you see represented on this slide. Kind of highlighted in the middle was this idea of a new path that can actually run alongside the corridor itself, and highlighting the Flint River itself where it's daylit as you go along the corridor, and opportunities for redevelopment and public investment as you go along. Next slide. And so I'm going to step through, again, we had those 3 primary areas that we looked at. I'm going to start kind of on the western edge and kind of quickly work through each of these focus areas. And so starting on the left, this is where Willingham intersects with Main Street. This is an area that likely is going to be hanging on to its industrial character for some time, but the hope is that this can transition to kind of friendlier industrial uses, if you will, industrial adjacent uses. While some of those particular industrial uses stay for a time, are there other uses we can introduce that they themselves don't mind being adjacent to industrial, but provide a little bit better buffer between that and the industrial, the residential and the commercial development nearby. And so one of the interesting opportunities that came out of this was twofold. One is there's the Headwaters Nature Preserve that's underway right now. I know there's a presentation later on that as well. How do we really capitalize on that? That really is the catalytic project for the entire corridor. And so how do we capitalize on that? How do we support that? How do we make sure that we all double down on making sure that that happens? How do we connect to it? How do we bring folks from the communities nearby to this area as well? One of the other interesting things, though, is that a lot of these industrial buildings have some character. There's some interesting industrial character, and maybe they're not as utilized as they used to be. So how do we not tear down and get rid of those, but how do we kind of repurpose those? And so this is an area where we proposed repurposing one of the existing industrial buildings that's currently vacant for kind of what we're calling the Headwaters hub. And this could be multiple things. It could be an incubator site. It could be a food hall. It could be a location for restaurateurs to kind of get startup commercial kitchen space. It really has a wide palette of things that it could be utilizing that interesting character, but really operate as the same way that the nature preserve is going to operate as an environmental sort of hub for the area. This is kind of the built environment hub for it as well. Next slide. And so here's just a before and after of that. And so kind of orient yourselves. We're looking west on Willingham toward the MARTA tracks, toward Main Street. And on the left, on the right there, you can see the old Claris building. It was a laundry, industrial laundry kind of facility for many years. It's currently vacant, but has some interesting character. If you kind of slow down and look at it, this is one of the buildings you just blow past. Why would you even slow down and look at it? And so what we want to do is reimagine, re-envision what could happen here if you had a reason to come here. Next slide. And so hopefully this is easy for you all to see on your screens, but here's kind of an after. Let's kind of open the building up. Let's kind of punctuate and perforate some of those currently kind of covered up building windows and doors and things to open that up to the community. How do we open that up more into the street? And then you can see in the front, there's the Willingham Headwaters trail kind of cutting through, connecting all of it. The other interesting thing is kind of what are the other wraparound things we can do nearby? And so thinking about supporting some other startups of different uses that maybe those don't belong on Main Street in East Point or College Park, but they're kind of an interesting use. And so thinking about food trucks and other things like that, where do they go when they're done, right? Where do they go to kind of retool, refit? And you have what are called food truck commissaries where these trucks will go. They often have a commercial kitchen and other support facilities, and perhaps that could happen somewhere nearby. The MARTA tracks presents an interesting opportunity for a gateway feature. MARTA has what's called the Artbound project initiative, where they'll actually install public art and other art initiatives on their own property. And so thinking about reconstituting that bridge with a mural or other public art. Next slide. I'm going to try to go quickly through these others. And so as we come on down, we get to the intersection of Norman Berry, Bobby Brown, and Willingham Drive. And this is an area that's starting to build off of some of the energy from the airport, both the airport hotels and commercial that are kind of found along Virginia Ave. You can go to the next slide. And so really looking in, zeroing in on this intersection in particular and thinking about, again, where does the Flint come through? Where is it daylit? Where is it not? Where does that trail, the Headwaters Trail, come through and connect this? And really an opportunity to create a really interesting opportunity for creekside, trailside development that we really don't have anywhere else in the region. Maybe there's some places sort of like this along the Beltline, but this is a different character than the Beltline. And so thinking about how do we mesh this with the existing residential areas nearby, give them the appropriate buffers and transitions, while introducing some other interesting commercial and community uses like, again, restaurants and other things like that. Next slide. And as we come across the interstate, we get into Hapeville. So this is where Virginia Ave, International, and Elkins, if you all kind of know roughly where that area is. There's a former Delta Tech Ops building. It's been vacant for many, many years now. Currently, they're working on renovating it. And so a lot of this project is about continuing the focus here in this area, is continuing some of the growth and development that's happening along Virginia Avenue, but really with an eye towards what do we do with that building? How do we reinvest and reinvent this area where it becomes kind of an interesting walkable area where this rather tired, kind of older office building becomes a prime location to be located near the Flint, near walkable environment and restaurants and things like that. Next slide. And so this is a quick view of what that looks like. Building off of the Delta headquarters to the south and Virginia Avenue and really bringing the development up north. Now the interesting thing is, rather than this area infilling with commercial and office and things becoming more intense, our thought was here's a chance for the neighborhood nearby, Virginia Park, to actually expand into the area. And so introducing some newer residential opportunities, both townhomes and apartments, as well as ground floor retail and restaurants. Now, one other thing I want to mention too, in this location, the Flint is daylit and then it's underground, and then it's daylit and it's underground. And one of the things we want to do is any chance you have to celebrate the Flint, whether it's above ground or below ground, we want to do that. And that really showed itself here in an interesting way, where you can see the Flint is daylit, where you see that tree line, but then it goes under the parking lots. And what we want to do is reconstitute some of those areas of parking lots to actually talk about what's happening underneath there. So whether it's pavements or pavement markings or street public art or something else to really highlight and enhance the experience with the Flint. Next slide. And just a few images there to kind of show what the examples were. Next slide. And so coming back to a similar image that I had earlier that showed you the development, really kind of the main thing is how do we get folks back to the Flint, right? How do we reintroduce the Flint? How do we create these moments where folks can interact with it in a real meaningful way? How can that be used to catalyze and incent some development with a really interesting environment that folks would want to live next to and work next to? And so this here, instead of stringing some development together, what we've shown is some potential moments, again, where folks could kind of interact with the Flint and new green space along the way. Next slide. Again, the most exciting opportunity that's underway already is the Flint Headwaters Nature Preserve that you all are obviously very aware of and very excited to see this moving ahead. And our thoughts are kind of, so what's next after that, right? We don't want to just stop there. So how do we think about trail connections to it? And one of the things we were also thinking about is, you know, once the park is in, how do we think about phase 2 of that? And so is there opportunities to expand across the Flint corridor itself? Perhaps repurposing some of the current industrial commercial property to something else like a nature center, community center, something else that could bring the community together. This was one thing that Woodward Academy was extremely excited in, and some other stakeholders, and in seeing how they could partner to make this happen. So this was one thing that a lot of the partners around the table.
Where is this piece located at?
On Willingham, right behind the track.
Willingham and Adams.
It's right behind the track.
Behind the track. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Next slide. And just a couple of images again showing, you know, sometimes it's an actual park space, sometimes it's just improving the aesthetics as you drive by. Next slide. And next slide. Actually, you can go one. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so here's an image in this area. Now, there's a lot of chain link fences with fleet parking, and there's actually, I've noticed a lot of wrecked vehicles that are parked in some of these parking lots. And so not a very inviting environment. Right now, this picture is actually taken standing on top of the Flint River. There's a culvert that it goes under, and so you're actually standing amongst the Flint right in this image. Let's go to the next slide. And so here's a reimagined Flint River. We want to keep that connectivity, so whether it's bike ped connectivity or vehicular connectivity, but here's a reimagined corridor, really inviting the community to come and experience the Flint, but thinking about how we improve the quality of the Flint, the water quality, the environmental areas around it, but it's still introducing development and thinking how we can capitalize on it as well. And so it's a little hard to see in the image, but there's actually nearby development that's fronting onto the trail and onto the creek. But even thinking about parking lots in a different way, where they're almost an extension of the green space, right, with more pervious surface and plantings and landscapes and bioswales and things to kind of make it more not only inviting but friendlier to the creek, friendlier to the stream and the environment. Next slide. Just a couple more slides briefly. We obviously looked at a lot of transportation issues as well. Primarily, a lot of this was about local connectivity, reestablishing some connections that have been lost over the years with the interstate coming in, thinking about as redevelopment occurs, how can we better route traffic, as well as beginning to think about untangling some of the rather confusing on-off ramps that take you maybe from Virginia Avenue, maybe not to Virginia Avenue, maybe north, maybe south. It's a little confusing if you're a visitor. If you live here, you know where you're going. But if you're wanting to bring visitors into this area, it can be a little confusing. And so perhaps thinking about how do we untangle that, or at the very least, how do we better sign it so folks can find their way around? Next slide. Like any good study, we identified some implementation items, and so the things bolded were the ones that we heard the most that folks were interested in focusing on first. And so I put a star by Headwaters Nature Preserve, because again, that's the thing to kind of keep our eyes on right now. But what's next? And so the next thing that folks were most excited about was the Headwaters Nature Trail, Headwaters Trail, kind of connecting the whole area and the future green space. But there's other things like improving the MARTA bus stops. A lot of times, the bus stops that are there are simply a sign with a pole in the ground. There's not even a sidewalk. Sometimes the Flint River is right there, and so it's a ditch. And so how do you really improve the environment there for bus riders? Think about zoning improvements to really attract the development that we want to see in the area, introducing public art, as I mentioned, and then thinking about how the cities can come together to create this Headwaters Headwaters hub, to really kind of introduce small businesses. One idea was actually introducing a minority-focused incubator to kind of look at all the minority businesses that are in the area and give them a home and a hub and support. Next slide. And just a quick summary table of some of the short 100-day action items that a lot of it was beginning and continuing these conversations, not letting the momentum fade, but kind of keep that going. I think that maybe one more slide, or that should be it. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Clay?
Well, let me just say first that I really appreciate the forward thinking that has gone into this. And to think it all started several years ago with saving the Flint River. Very impressive. I'm very enthusiastic about the Nature Center. I think it'll turn out to be a wonderful connection for the schools, particularly Woodward, which is relatively close. And I think it's going to be a huge asset to the city. I think it'll be a good asset to East Point on the other side of Willingham to clean up some of the more industrial buildings. So I don't really have any questions. I just have a lot of good positive comments, and I want to say thanks for all the work that's gone into it. We really appreciate it.
Councilman Carn?
All right, thanks for coming. Heck of a project. This has got to be one of the more thorough packets I've gotten in a while. I guess you guys covered every square inch of this thing. Yeah, great to see this happening in our community. You know, a lot of it's not touching us. It's a little bit that does affect us, and we're glad to get that. But at the end of the day, it affects us all. It's just a line somebody drew. So what goes on further down Bobby Brown and throughout the area is always going to be good for us. So looks great, impressive, I suppose. So yeah, you guys keep going, and you're going to get the TAD from East Point. Is that right?
Well, I think they're
the
working
hope?
on it, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Councilman Allen?
Yeah, I think it's great to see all the different communities working together. I thank you for your time. Tasha, I know you've put a lot of work into this, and thank you very much for your work. The little parcel of land behind Delta Airlines, kind of like a little triangle, have y'all been able to do anything with that, or any plans for that right now?
And is that the piece near the empty office building?
Yes, well, it's right behind the Delta main campus there, right between them and yeah. I think FedEx is there,
Yeah.
some of the other buildings,
Okay.
it's just right there off of Virginia Avenue.
Right, and you know, as with regards to the Flint River itself, Hannah or Stacy may be able to speak to that. Most of our work kind of looked from Virginia Ave North, but that was definitely one of those pieces. It was just, shouting distance from the edge of the study area. We tried not to let the study area be a hard boundary. We wanted to kind of make sure that things are meshing together. So they may be able to speak more to kind of what's happening.
Yeah, you really can't go too far because it goes underneath the runway,
Right.
but there's just a little parcel there, and I didn't know if y'all had made any plans with them.
Yeah, and at least during the study, again, I'll let Hannah provide the more thorough update, but what we'd heard is that kind of had been progressing prior to the pandemic, and things had just kind of gone on pause, and the hope is, I think, to kickstart it soon. So we definitely highlighted that as one of those key areas for folks to kind of have their eye on as the next school green space. So.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate all your work.
Councilman McKay?
Yes, well, I also say it's a great project. You did a great job on the study, very comprehensive. Just two comments. I like how you compared the potential redevelopment to the West End, Atlanta, to Lee Street. That was a good comparison. And I'll be interested to see how you can work with the recycle company. I think there are some benefits to it as well as challenges. But I'll be interested to see how that balances itself out. And the other thing is you are right, there are homes coming in that area. That's impressive. So you have some buy-in there.
Well, just want to thank you for all of your efforts. I got an opportunity to participate in at least one of those focus groups, and I thought the input from the community was outstanding, and it clearly made it into all of this, and shows that your group was listening and taking it all in. So very appreciative for your efforts, and thanks for coming tonight.
Great, thank you all so much.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thank you.
The final item on our workshop agenda is an update from finding the Flint Headwaters Nature Preserve. Ms. Hall
Yes.
Garrison, hello
So
again.
I am back, and I'm really glad and excited that this got to fall on the same day as the LCI study for Willingham Corridor, because the Finding the Flint project is really the icing on the cake, and I think that John's presentation states the importance of this project. So for those not familiar with the project, the City of College Park began working with the Finding the Flint and the Conservation Fund in 2017 towards the acquisition of the property. A lot has occurred during that time, a lot of transition, the pandemic, but yet the tenacity has remained the same. So today I do have Stacy Funderburg with the Conservation Fund and Hannah Palmer with Finding the Flint to provide update on the project.
good evening. I'm Hannah Palmer. It's nice to see you all in person, finally. Last time I saw some of you, we were out on the Flint River in canoes.
Yep. I didn't fall over,
Yeah.
just saying.
So I've spoken to the BIDA board about this project. I've spoken directly to Mayor Motley Broom and to the economic development staff, and I've had the privilege of paddling the Flint with some of y'all and touring the Headwaters Nature Preserve site with a few of you. So y'all are not strangers to this project, but I did want to give a general update because a lot has happened since I've seen you, and we have some exciting updates. It's great that John Tully just went first because he kind of explained the larger context of finding the Flint. As some of y'all know, the Flint River really starts on Willingham, and it's right on the boundary of East Point and College Park. And that little stream that runs along Willingham Drive is actually the headwaters of the Flint. Where it meets the airport is next to the Delta Flight Museum, and that's a site that's owned by the airport. From there, it goes under the runways, and it is underneath our world's busiest airport for 1.5 miles, and then it flows across Clayton County and all the way across the state where it meets the Chattahoochee at the Florida state line. It is Georgia's second longest river. It's an incredibly important water source for the entire region, and it starts right here on the edge of College Park and East Point. I'm an East Point native, but I grew up in Forest Park, so this river really connects the places that are most important to me. And it's really exciting to look at the river from above, look at the map, and think about where we can start to bring little pieces of it back into people's lives and back into the neighborhoods that we share. Obviously, that 1.5 miles that's under the airport, it's going to stay there, but there's all these other spots, these segments of the river where there's a real opportunity to create little parks, trails, and in the south side of the airport in Clayton County, some very large-scale parks and trails that will not only help restore the river, but bring it back into the identity of these communities. So I have brought some handouts. I've got a whole map of where the river is, and I'd love to take the opportunity to show you guys how magical it is, both in tiny pockets north of the airport and then south of the airport where it's flowing freely and looking more like a river. But to just focus for a moment on this site that's in the city of College Park, it is really the first spot where the Flint River sees daylight. There's this 7-acre triangle that is, you would drive right past it on Willingham and not notice it because it is all behind barbed wire fences. It's kind of squished between the practice track for Woodward Academy and some industrial buildings that are on Willingham. And on the back side is the historic neighborhoods of College Park and of East Point. So on all sides, there's industrial, there's institutional, and there's residential. This little triangle has been fenced off since the 1980s when MARTA purchased it. Originally, it was part of the Gate City Cotton Mill, and the Flint River was dammed there to create a reservoir for the mill. That mill's been gone since the 60s, and when MARTA bought it, it was because they were building their stations at East Point and College Park and needed the area for drainage. So when they put that fence off, nobody's been back there except some City of College Park water and sewer folks who are helping to maintain a drainage easement on the site. Some of y'all have been able to walk the site. I was able to get out there last week with spring coming on. It's starting to look green, and it's really a hidden gem. You walk back there in those trees. There's multiple streams on the site that lead to the headwaters, and it is full of life already. We're calling it a nature preserve, but it's kind of already a nature preserve because birds and fish and frogs and critters, raccoons, are already enjoying that space. And we've seen some amazing turtles on the site and hawks. But we'd like to open it up to the public to enjoy. So it has been a very long conversation with MARTA to talk about, will they sell the property, will they lease the property? It has taken years to kind of move that conversation forward with many departments at MARTA. We have not only the approval, but the enthusiastic support of MARTA. They'd like to see this piece of land, which is undevelopable, used by the communities that have made MARTA great, that rely on MARTA. From this site, it's about a 10-minute walk to the East Point station and a 15-minute walk to the College Park station. And MARTA has precedent for converting some of their lands to public green space all over Metro Atlanta. One that comes to mind is in Chamblee, where they have a stormwater detention area that is being converted to a park. And there's another one at the Lindbergh station. So finally, as we were getting together some major grant applications last fall, we were applying for the Gosa Grant. That is the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act that is taking, there's now a small tax on outdoor equipment that's purchased in the state of Georgia, and that goes to support our state parks and our publicly accessible green spaces and lands. So they're funding different trails and parks projects across the state that are regionally significant. We worked really hard last fall to put together a grant application proving that this is a regionally significant park, not just because it would be College Park's very first nature preserve, but it's one of the few public nature preserves in the airport area. If you think about where is there a green space, a public green space near the world's busiest airport, you have to look pretty far. You have to look to Reynolds Nature Preserve, maybe in Clayton County. You know, there's a playground in Hapeville that maybe counts, but if you go to the world's busiest airport, you're not going to find public green space. So that's what's so special about this, and that it's the headwaters of one of the region's most important rivers. So we put together this grant application. Through the process, we came up with some of the renderings that you see in your packet and on the screen. Those renderings were developed with Cardno, with Pond. These are landscape architects and civil engineers who are studying how to keep water moving through the site, infiltrating the ground, and cleaning runoff as it enters the site, so that the site can continue to flood as you know, when it rains. That area is designed to fill with water and to drain slowly in a way that cleans the water. So we still want the site to perform its stormwater functions. That's going to be important to MARTA, and yet at the same time be full of boardwalks and nature areas where people can safely enjoy the site. So we made a huge leap forward last fall, developing those drawings along with the input of many community members, including a great one was a group of 7th graders at Woodward Academy. They weren't Woodward students, they were there for the summer program. But we got a lot of young people involved. We walked the site with community members who pointed out the blackberry bushes and the hawks and the way that the trees really buffer the noise of the airport in Willingham and MARTA. You're just in a quiet little pocket. So we tried to incorporate all of those ideas and values into these drawings. Halfway into that process of getting the grant application together, we heard from MARTA that they couldn't sell it, that they needed to lease it. This is all kind of a complicated legal curveball. The good news is, so we weren't able to get the grant this fall. We'll be set up to go after it, last fall, but we'll be set up to go after it again this fall. And MARTA took a couple months in the fall to straighten out the legal details and clear the leaseback agreement that was FTA had put on the land. This is something Stacy, the real estate attorney, will have to talk about if you have questions about it. My understanding, though, is that all legal roadblocks have been cleared, and MARTA is prepared to sell that property directly to the city of College Park at this point. So we want to be able to take advantage of that, their willingness to sell. We have already received a lot of positive feedback from local funders and national funders that would like to contribute to capital improvements at the park. So I don't know, I shouldn't go into too much detail on that, but we have a lot of promising conversations going with different funders, from airport area, Aerotropolis funders, to those who are coming to the airport area to establish their businesses. So I'm not sure what other slides I had to show you. I should point out on this slide that Headwaters Nature Preserve is just the first of many Finding the Flint projects along the headwaters. I'm working also with Delta and the airport, and then on several projects with Clayton County Water Authority south of the airport. So while y'all may be the first ones to get a public access point on the Flint River, hopefully you're the first of many, and that we will start to string together this river again through different public access points. Let me answer your questions. I think the slides sort of just show more context of where this river is and what the site looks like. But I just wanted to give you all this update because in the next couple months we're going to be working to secure funding to purchase the property and to move forward on applying for state level grants and bringing funders out to walk the site and talk about what support they can bring to getting it built.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. Appreciate it. Councilman Clay?
been a long time since we had our first meetings. I think, didn't we have one at the Historical Society, I think, and quite amazing. I appreciate your staying with the project and being its godmother, mother, what have you. The only question I have, I remember back in the earlier days, we talked about an area at the airport that we were hoping would be a place for people to overlook the park, or overlook the stream, and there were some concerns, well, how do you handle security and all that? Is that still a possibility, do you think?
I do. And that's, I think, the site that Councilman Allen was asking about, that's right next to Delta, the Flight Museum. That, to me, is a huge breakthrough for the airport to be involved in creating a public green space right on the edge of the airport, where the Flint River meets the airport. At the end of 2019, we worked closely with Delta and the airport and a design team to create some sketches for that 2.5-acre site that's become a public green space, and secure that culvert so that nothing but water can get under the airport. And we were making great progress. We were fundraising, and then the pandemic hit. And any energy that the airport and Delta had for talking about campus improvements, and that conversation went quiet for a long time. I've continued to work with Delta and the airport on cleanup activities, raising awareness, but that specific project has kind of been on the back burner while I focused on Headwaters Nature Preserve and some Clayton County issues. I'm happy to say that Delta just hired a new director of sustainability that reports directly to their CEO, and we have a conversation lined up with that person, and we'd like to try to revive that project. It seems like the timing is right now, with the airlines making a comeback, with travel making a comeback, and with them facing the same needs they had back in 2019 for improving their campus and recruiting and retaining talent. So I'm optimistic. I have to be patient. That was a pretty unexpected blow. I don't have to tell y'all what it did to to paying for these projects, but we'll come back to that one.
Well, I think we're solidly behind our piece of it. And do you know Gary Young, our Director of Airport Affairs?
I've met him.
Okay. Well, you guys might want to get together. I don't know whether we can give support along with Gary, but through Jerry. But I'd love to see that happen at the airport as well.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Carn?
All right, thanks for coming. Great project. These waterways are become more and more valuable as you look at land and development around these areas. So your second bite at the apple with the MARTA grant, when is that coming around next year? When does the application process start?
It's the state, what's it called? Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act grant. We will be working on that application starting this spring, and if it follows the same timeline as last year, it was due October 15th.
Okay.
So we have most of this year to try to complete any design issues and work towards our local match to go for that money. I think last year we requested like $3 million.
Now, is this multiple projects that they're entertaining, or they're only the one?
They do many projects each year across the state, and they like to see a diverse mix across the state. But this year they funded a similar trails project in Athens and the Peachtree Creek Greenway, which is very similar to this project.
And the MARTA board themselves make this decision, or just
This is a state program.
admin? Oh, this is the state.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
it's a Georgia Outdoor Stewardship. Yeah.
Okay.
MARTA just owns the land.
But the
that we're
MARTA
getting.
You mentioned
board
the
did,
MARTA lease.
we did get the MARTA board support on purchasing the project,
Okay.
the land.
But you
the
said
land
that
use.
may be, that's going to happen.
Yes.
The
MARTA's
application,
ready
the Georgia application is going to be next year.
this
Or
fall.
end of
Well,
this
it'll be
year.
October, right.
Okay, all right, sounds good, all right.
Councilman Allen?
Fantastic program, right behind my in-laws, by the way, and they will love it. So, in fact, I was out there walking around and eating some of the blackberries. I hope you don't tear up those bushes out there, but this is a great project, again, with East Point, College Park, and It'll be great for the neighborhood. It'll be great for that area, and it'll kind of jumpstart a lot of things going down Willingham as well. So thank you very much for your time and a lot of work over the years that you all have put into this. Thank you very much.
Councilman Gay?
Yes, ma'am, it's a great project. I'm a conservationist as well. I'm gonna talk to my colleagues tonight during my council minutes on finding Camp Truett. It's a project I've been passionate about, and I would like to see how I can get, you know, the same kind of appreciation. But congratulations.
Well, I do, thank you, and I do hope that as we see success with finding the Flint, it'll become a model for finding Camp Creek and
Camp Truett.
finding Utoy Creek. I bet Camp Truett's on Camp Creek, though. I know, I've been back there.
It's got a head wall too. I don't know where it goes. We're gonna figure that out.
See, I would like to see more respect for all the waterways on the south side. We start here. Thank you.
Ms. Palmer, none of this would have been happening without you. So, thank you. This is a real community. It is how we are building the community we deserve. And so I can't thank you enough for all of your efforts to build awareness of this project, to build awareness of the Flint, for people to understand that what happens here impacts the entirety of our state, and really connecting people with our environment. It is exceedingly important work. We are so glad that you are at the helm of it, and cannot thank you enough for your efforts.
Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot.
Have a great evening.
You too.
All right, we have concluded our workshop business. We will see everyone at 7:30.